I had an award ceremony recently. I sat next to a film director, Peter Jackson, who's making a documentary about the Beatles, and his big moment of insight was that, you know, John Lennon was a pretty cool guy. And I just thought, oh God. Anyway, imagine that the Beatles were still touring. Imagine that they were still making albums. Imagine that, you know, that they were a band that continued to make records, like Tom Petty, for example. The late wonderful Tom Petty continued to make records. The Eagles, or, you know, the Stones, or anybody like that, constantly trying to make records that, and to perform and make music that came from their era, the period of their struggle and their breakthrough and their deepest experimentation. You know, that if you compare artists like that to, let's say, David Hockney or Lucian Freud, I'm naming two English painters, but it's same with American painters. What did Andy Warhol do? He did the same thing over and over and over again, you know, and they got paid more and more and more and more. But the great idea they had when they were younger, whatever that idea was, the great concept. And there's a point at which you mustn't overdevelop what you do. You know, for example, David Hockney doesn't even paint on paper anymore. He does it all on an iPad. And his work is very, very simple, very pure too, but he's doing the same thing pretty much over and over again. So for us, that thing about confusing, you know, I just should butt into myself here. The reason why I can say this now is because we have a new album out. My problem with touring has always been, without the new music out, whether it's a good album or a poor album, without that new music out, you're constantly being seen to be somebody that's resting on your laurels. And I don't mind resting on my laurels, but, you know, I want to do new stuff. Right. So I feel really good at the moment, really happy to be particularly going out being challenged, because it's difficult playing with an orchestra. But just the fact that in my back pocket I've got a new album coming out that Roger sings on so fantastically well, and just thinking, wow, you know, it's great to be firing on all cylinders.